2005, the most beloved young player in basketball sat across from Stephen A. Smith on national television.
Iverson for the record. Yes, and there it is!
And one of the most hated players in the league leaned over to warn him about something nobody else could see coming.
Iverson, this is going to be something. Iverson, some magic there.
LeBron James was 20 years old. He was the chosen one.
My first game on national television, it was like, will he be one of the one-name guys that ever played this game? At the end, it was like, LeBron. And I'm like, I'm 17 years old.
The chosen one calls him the self-proclaimed king.
The prodigy who had walked in from high school and made it look easy, and the entire sport was in love with him.
I love LeBron James. If you look up the word basketball player in the dictionary, it'll be a picture of LeBron James.
Allen Iverson looked at all of that adoration and told him it was temporary.
I always let LeBron know off top, dog, they love you right now. They love you right now. But please believe me, the first incident, the first time something happened, they are waiting, man. They're waiting, man. They're waiting, man.
It was 2005 on Stephen A. Smith's ESPN show. Quite frankly, Iverson was near the end of his prime, a four-time scoring champion who had seen the very top and the very bottom of what public opinion could do to a man. Then he said the part that turned a warning into a confession.
Learn from what I did wrong. Learn from all the stuff you seen Allen Iverson do wrong that rubbed everybody the wrong way. If you don't want to go through what I go through right now, as far as being the bad guy in the NBA and all this stuff, be fake then. Basically, that's all I'm telling you. Just be fake.
At the time, it sounded like bitterness. Here was a 30-year-old with a reputation for being difficult, telling the Golden Boy that the love wasn't real and that the only way to protect himself was to stop being honest. Years later, the moment Iverson had warned him about finally arrived. But how did Allen Iverson see it coming when nobody else did?
Some people get scared of who you are, man. When you got the effect on a whole lot of people, a whole generation, then all they want to do is dig up some dirt on you.
To understand the warning, you have to understand the man giving it, because Iverson wasn't guessing. He was describing his own life. Allen Iverson was the #1 overall pick in 1996, the same draft that produced Kobe Bryant, and he was arguably the most electrifying small player the sport had ever seen. 6 feet tall, maybe 165 pounds soaking wet, and completely unafraid of men 8 inches taller and 100 pounds heavier. He crossed over Michael Jordan as a rookie.
Tell me about the little guy's crossover.
Very quick.
Watch this.
He won Rookie of the Year. He won 4 scoring titles at a size where he was getting hit like a crash test dummy every single night. Taking punishment no lead guard his weight should have survived. In 2001, he won MVP and dragged a Philadelphia roster with no other star to the NBA Finals, where he dropped 48 points in Game 1 against a heavily favored Lakers team and stepped over Tyronn Lue in a moment that still gets replayed decades later.
Yes, that was not pretty by him.
Iverson, Lowry was not going anywhere.
The pressure defense.
He came from nothing to get there. Hampton, Virginia. A childhood so poor the family sometimes had no running water, with sewage backing up into the floors of the house. And before he ever became a professional, the country had already been handed a story about who Allen Iverson was. On Valentine's Day in 1993, 17 years old and the best high school athlete in America, recruited in both football and basketball by everyone, Iverson went bowling with friends in Hampton. A brawl broke out between his group and a group of white patrons.
People act like they don't know, Steve, what I was in football. You know what I mean? They act like they don't know. Like I was way better in football than I was in basketball.
Iverson always maintained that it started when someone hurled a racial slur at him. What happened next shaped his public image for the rest of his life. Only 4 people were arrested, all of them black. None of the white men involved were charged, and prosecutors reached for a statute called maiming by mob, a law originally written after the Civil War to protect black people from lynchings, now turned around and aimed at a black teenager. He was tried as an adult, convicted, and sentenced to 15 years. He served 4 months at a correctional facility before the governor granted clemency. And in 1995, an appeals court threw the conviction out entirely for insufficient evidence.
Being incarcerated for something that I didn't do and given 15 years for actual fight. No guns, no knives, no chains, nothing. I said, Nana, why are they doing this to me if they know I didn't do what they said I did?
Don't question God.
Never question God.
Sit with the sequence. Convicted, jailed, and cleared, all before he played a college game. His high school coach put it plainly. They wanted to make an example out of Iverson. By the time he reached the NBA, a large part of the audience had already decided he was trouble. He hadn't earned that. It had been assigned to him.
They tried to ruin me. They didn't want me to be what you just described.
Yeah.
And who I am to the masses. You ain't do nothing but make me stronger.
Straight up.
That's all you did was make me strong.
On the floor, he was undeniable. Off the floor, the league treated him like a problem to be managed. Iverson arrived wearing cornrows, tattoos, throwback jerseys, and baggy clothes, bringing hip-hop culture directly into an NBA that was desperately trying to sell a cleaner image. He talked back to coaches. He famously went viral for a rant about practice. He got into public feuds with Larry Brown, with the media, with the league office itself. And the NBA's response was to change the rules because of him. In 2005, the league instituted a formal dress code, widely understood at the time to be aimed squarely at Iverson and the culture he carried.
I dressed like the older guys from my neighborhood. Once I was able to wear what I wanted to wear, that's what I was gonna do. I'm dressing like this because, you know, this what the old heads from my neighborhood, this how they dress. And David Stern and the rest of the NBA was like, how you gonna tell me what to wear to go to work? Let me be fresh, man. Don't have me looking like everybody else look.
No more jerseys, no more chains, no more baggy jeans or throwbacks at official functions. Business casual by mandate. The message wasn't subtle. Who you are makes us uncomfortable, so we're legislating it out of the building. And this is the crucial context. Iverson wasn't disliked because he was a bad person or a bad teammate.
I would say the calling me a thug when I know I'm not, judging me off of a look.
The people who actually shared a locker room with him described almost the opposite of the public caricature. Teammates talked about a 165-pound man who threw his body into 250-pound centers every night and never once took a game off, who played through injuries that would have sat other stars, who inspired ferocious loyalty from the people around him. One teammate's line cuts right through the myth. Allen didn't take no games off.
I'd rather play hurt than not at all, because I love the game so much.
The gap between that man and the one the country saw is the whole story, and nothing captures it better than the single most replayed moment of his career. The practice rant. You know the clip.
Listen, we talking about practice. Not a game. We talking about practice. But we talking about practice, man. What are we talking about? Practice? We're talking about practice, man.
A visibly frustrated Iverson saying the word practice over and over. The audio later chopped into a meme, a punchline, a ringtone. For 20 years, it was shorthand for a lazy, selfish athlete who didn't care. Here is what the clip cut out. 7 months before Iverson stood at that podium, his best friend since childhood, Rahsaan Langford, had been shot and killed.
Best friend just got killed. Whatever reporter was just kept asking me about practice situation, and I just lost it. Got everybody in there. I get to tell the world I ain't going nowhere. This dude just keep on asking me about practice. I was happy, and it's supposed to have been a happy moment, and then for you to turn it into a negative thing with the practice.
Iverson carried that grief silently through an entire season, telling almost no one, tapping his friend's initials before every free throw. Days before that press conference, the trial of the man accused of killing him had just begun. And later in that same press conference, once the reporter stopped asking about practice, Iverson said this: "I'm upset for one reason. I lost my best friend, I lost him, and I lost this year. My best friend is dead." Nobody replayed that part. The remix used the word practice. It left out the dead friend, This is the machine Iverson understood better than anyone. He had watched the public take the most painful moment of his year and turn it into a joke, because the joke fit the story they'd already chosen. He said what he thought, he looked how he looked, and a large part of the audience punished him for it while happily buying his sneakers. Iverson had lived a specific and painful truth. He had watched the same crowd that cheered his crossover recoil at his appearance. He had been the most exciting player in basketball and one of the most criticized at the same time, and he understood that those two things were connected. He knew that public affection was conditional in a way most stars never discover until it's too late.
Everybody not gonna love you. You know what I mean? You just concentrate on the ones that do. You just appreciate the ones that love you.
There's a detail that captures it perfectly. When Iverson had his single greatest season, the 2001 MVP run to the finals, the same league that profited from his popularity was actively uncomfortable with him. He was selling jerseys and filling arenas while being lectured about his image. Adored and policed at the same time. A man who has lived that learns something the Golden Boys never do. The cheering and the resentment are not opposites. They are the same crowd, and it can switch which one it's doing without warning. And here is the final bitter irony that hangs over everything Iverson told LeBron. The league won that culture war, then lost it. Everything the NBA once tried to legislate out of Allen Iverson, the tattoos, the cornrows, the chains, the hip-hop, the refusal to look and talk like a corporate spokesman, is now simply what the NBA is. Players arrive at arenas dressed in the very styles the dress code once banned, and the league markets it. The culture Iverson was punished for carrying became the league's brand. He was right about the game before the game caught up. He just paid the price in the years before the apology.
I had to take this ass whooping with the dress code. So now look at everybody. Everybody give me my flowers for that. The good part of me about taking the ass whooping from it is now I get the flowers for it from them.
So when Allen Iverson leaned over to a 20-year-old and told him to be fake, understand where that sentence is coming from. It is not the advice of a cynic. It is the advice of a man who spent a decade refusing to be anything but real and got a bowling alley conviction, a dress code, and a dead friend turned into a meme for his trouble. Be fake was not what he wanted for LeBron. It was what the world had taught him it cost to be himself.
And I took ass whooping for it. I took whooping for being myself. That's crazy. You know what I mean?
Which you actually taught me how to be myself too.
Which is why the warning to LeBron carried the weight it did. Because in 2005, LeBron James had no idea any of that was waiting for him. Understand how absurd the hype around LeBron had been. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated as a high school junior, labeled the chosen one in print before he could legally vote. His high school games were moved to a college arena and broadcast on national television. ESPN aired them. He signed a shoe deal with Nike worth roughly $90 million before he played a single professional minute. No prospect in the history of American team sports had ever walked in under that kind of spotlight.
My first game on national television, it was like, will he be one of the one-name guys that ever played this game? At the end, it was like, LeBron. And I'm like, I'm 17 years old. It was also like super fucking scary and intimidating too.
And then he did the impossible. He lived up to it. Most prospects buckle under that kind of expectation. LeBron walked into the league at 18 and immediately looked like a franchise cornerstone, averaging over 20 points as a teenager, then climbing every season toward MVP-level production.
LeBron, as you take the court for your first game, how are your nerves tonight?
I got a little nerves in my stomach right now, but, once the jump ball starts up, I'll be ready to play.
Part of the game, and there's his first assist, and it's a beauty. LeBron James' first shot is good. LeBron coming the other way off the glass.
He was talented, he was humble in interviews, he said the right things, and he stayed out of trouble. There was no scandal, no feud, no controversy.
I didn't want to my opportunity up. I knew that the statistics for an inner city black kid to be able to be in a position that I was in, especially for my hometown, it never ever happens.
Never.
It never
works out.
He was, by every visible measure, the perfect superstar. So when Iverson told him the crowd was waiting to turn, it must have sounded insane. Turn on what? There was nothing to turn on. But Iverson wasn't talking about anything LeBron had done. He was talking about something LeBron was eventually going to do because everyone in that position does. He was describing a law of gravity, not a specific mistake. The love, Iverson was saying, isn't really about you. It's about the story people have decided to tell about you. You are cast as a character in a narrative you didn't write. And for as long as you play the part, the affection pours in. The moment you deviate from that story, even slightly, even reasonably, the same energy that built you up comes looking for you.
It all started with the decision. The decision really had me sit back. It was like, oh, you decided to go on TV and make a decision for your career. We got you. We finally made a little chink in the armor. We got something.
And it comes with interest because the crowd feels betrayed by a version of you that only ever existed in their heads. He gave that warning in 2005. The incident came in 2010. By the way, if you're following along, hit subscribe, because this next part is where a 5-year-old warning becomes one of the most accurate predictions in NBA history. Anyway, by the summer of 2010, LeBron James had spent 7 seasons carrying the Cleveland Cavaliers. He had won 2 MVPs.
LeBron, like a freight train. Rasheed Wallace didn't foul him hard enough. He gets
buckets, as you can see. LeBron James.
He had done everything asked of him in his hometown for a franchise that had never won anything. But he hadn't won a title, and he was a free agent, and the entire sport was holding its breath. What happened next is now infamous. LeBron agreed to a 1-hour primetime television special on ESPN titled The Decision, built around the single announcement of where he would sign. The money raised went to charity. The intent, at least partly, was generous. The execution was a catastrophe. Sitting in a suburban gym in front of a national audience in a hometown that adored him, he said the words, "I'm going to take my talents to South Beach and join the Miami Heat."
In this fall, I'm going to take my talents to South Beach and join the Miami Heat. That was the conclusion I woke up with this morning.
On the summer of 2010, he announces he's taking his talents to South Beach. It enrages Dan Gilbert.
The backlash was instant and enormous, on a scale the sport had genuinely never seen for an athlete who hadn't committed a crime. Cleveland fans burned his jersey in the streets, filming it, posting it, turning grief into a public bonfire. The Cavaliers' owner published an open letter in an infamous Comic Sans font, calling the departure a cowardly betrayal and guaranteeing that Cleveland would win a title before LeBron did.
I personally guarantee that the Cleveland Cavaliers will win an NBA championship before the self-titled former king wins one.
This shocking act of disloyalty from our homegrown chosen one.
A decade of accumulated goodwill, the hometown kid makes good story that had made him beloved, evaporated in a single evening. The way he left mattered as much as the leaving. The 1-hour special, the spectacle of it, handed his critics everything they needed. Then came the part that fulfilled Iverson's warning word for word. The love flipped to hatred, and it flipped completely. The same media that had crowned him the chosen one now cast him as the villain. His welcome party in Miami, where the 3 stars rose through smoke and flashing lights and LeBron predicted not 1, not 2, not 3 championships, became Exhibit A in the case that he was arrogant, disloyal, and soft.
You know how you put a little sauce on your story?
Yeah, you add a little bit to it.
That's what he did. He had a little sauce, you know what I mean? And then that sauce became, oh, we gonna hold him to it.
Him going down to Miami, jumping on the bandwagon of D. Wade and Chris Bosh. 3 or 4 championships in Miami, to me, is equivalent to 1 championship in Cleveland.
For the next several years, a massive portion of the country didn't just dislike LeBron James. They organized around his failure.
Never seen hate until LeBron decided to come to Miami.
Right.
Then I started seeing hate up close. And hate is an ugly thing.
He's the most overrated, overhyped superstar in my history in this business. Seriously.
His playoff losses became national celebrations. Opposing arenas that had never had a stake in him suddenly did. The most talented player alive had become the most rooted against athlete in the sport, and he had done it without breaking a single law or hurting a single person. This is the scenario Iverson had described in that studio. Not the details, the mechanism. LeBron had done one thing the public didn't like, and the affection didn't just cool, it inverted. The first incident, they were waiting, and notice what the incident actually was. LeBron had committed no crime. He hadn't cheated anyone. He had changed jobs, which every person watching him is legally free to do, and announced it clumsily. That was enough. The gap between the size of the mistake and the size of the punishment is the entire point Iverson had been making. The reaction was never really proportional to the act, because it was never really about the act. Now here's where the story gets more interesting than a simple, "I told you so," because of the second half of Iverson's advice. The part everyone remembers as cynical. Be fake. On the surface, that sounds like the worst possible thing to tell a young man. Stop being authentic. Manage your image. Give the public the character they want instead of the person you are. But watch what LeBron actually did next, because it's almost a case study in the advice. The hatred had a real cost, and this is the part that matters because it's where the advice actually got tested. In the 2011 finals against Dallas, with the villain narrative at its absolute peak, LeBron shrank. He disappeared in fourth quarters, played tight and tentative and joyless, and lost a title he was heavily favored to win.
It was rare that you saw him work out like that, but when I saw him work out like that, I'm like, oh, he can shoot. And he was like, I'm gonna get some threes. Same thing. He didn't miss.
Millions of people celebrated openly, and by his own later admission, he had let all of it get inside his head. He was playing not to be hated instead of playing to win. He was trying to answer every critic at once, and it was strangling the best player alive. What he did next is the whole lesson in miniature. He stopped trying to please anyone. He went into the gym that offseason and worked with Hakeem Olajuwon on a post-game, narrowing his focus to the one thing entirely within his control, which was getting better. Miami's culture gave him room to reset without the noise following him into the building every day. And he made a decision that reporters would only fully understand years later. He would stop trying to manage what people felt about him and start managing only what he did. That is the pivot, not a change in talent. A change in where he pointed his attention from the crowd's opinion, which he could never control, to his own game and his own story, which he could. He stopped letting other people write his story. The championships that followed were the result of that shift, not the cause of it. Then, in 2014, he did the thing that rebuilt his entire public image. He went home. LeBron announced his return to Cleveland in a first-person essay in Sports Illustrated, ghost-free and carefully constructed, framed entirely around loyalty, forgiveness, and home. No smoke machines, no stage. Where the decision had been about him, this was about them. He wrote about Ohio, about the fans he'd hurt, about wanting to raise his family where he grew up. He even publicly forgave the owner who had torched him in Comic Sans. Every note was pitched to repair, and in 2016 he delivered the championship the region had waited 52 years for, erasing a 3-1 finals deficit against a Warriors team that had just won a record 73 games. The single greatest on-court achievement of his life, wrapped inside the single greatest image repair campaign of his life. The redemption was complete. The villain became the hometown hero who kept his promise. But look closely at how it happened. Every step of that comeback was managed. The essay instead of the special. The message of loyalty instead of ambition. The careful, deliberate, strategic control of his own narrative. LeBron didn't become a different person. He became a person who understood the way Iverson had told him to, that the public reads a story, and that a superstar who doesn't control his own story will have one written for him. That's what Iverson actually meant, and it's why the word fake was misleading. He wasn't telling LeBron to be a phony. He was telling him that the public is going to build a character with your name on it no matter what. So you had better have a hand in writing it. Refuse to manage your image, and you don't get to keep some pure, authentic self. You just hand the pen to people who don't care about you. Iverson kept the pen his whole career and paid for it. He was telling LeBron there was a smarter way to stay true to yourself, one that didn't require bleeding in public to do it. Iverson learned that lesson far too late to save his own image. LeBron learned it arguably from watching what it did to Iverson. There's a reason this particular warning came from this particular man, and it's the part that gives the whole thing its weight. LeBron didn't idolize Iverson casually. He has said it in plain terms. Michael Jordan inspired him, but Jordan felt out of this world, untouchable, more myth than man. Allen Iverson felt real. In LeBron's own words, AI was the god. He represented what a generation of kids actually were, and he resonated with every inner-city kid who had a struggle. LeBron grew up in Akron in circumstances not far from Iverson's own, raised by a teenage single mother moving from apartment to apartment. When he looked at the NBA as a kid, Iverson was the one who looked like his world. So when Iverson pulled him aside, this wasn't a random veteran running his mouth. This was the one player LeBron had modeled himself on, telling the next chosen one what the throne was going to cost. And the tragedy underneath it is that Iverson was speaking from a wound that never fully healed. He gave that advice while still living inside the consequence of not having received it himself. His career ended messily. Money troubles, a reputation that lingered, a stretch where one of the greatest guards who ever lived couldn't find the respect his game had earned. The culture eventually caught up to him, the braids and the tattoos and the crossover swagger becoming the template for basically every star who followed, but it caught up late. The apology, if you can call it that, arrived years after the damage was done. Everything the league once tried to legislate out of him with a dress code is now the aesthetic of the entire NBA. He won that war. He just won it after the part of his life that needed the victory was over. He was, in a sense, warning LeBron not to become him. And the difference in outcome is almost entirely about timing. Iverson got the appreciation 2 decades after he needed it. LeBron got the warning 2 decades before he needed it fully, with enough runway to build around it. Same lesson. Opposite order. That order is the whole story. And LeBron listened, which is the part that separates this from every other warning in the sport. Most of these stories end with the young star ignoring the veteran and learning the hard way. LeBron learned the hard way exactly once with The Decision, and then spent the next decade applying the lesson so thoroughly that he became the most image-aware superstar the league has ever produced. A production company that makes films and television. A media platform built to let athletes tell their own stories without a middleman, which is the entire Iverson lesson turned into a company. A public school in Akron for at-risk kids. Ownership stakes across multiple sports. Political and social stances chosen carefully and defended consistently. Every move deliberate, every narrative as much as possible, authored by him rather than about him. He built the armor Iverson told him he'd need, then kept building it for 20 more years. Which brings us to the strangest twist of all. 20 years after that studio conversation, both men ended up on the other side of it. Iverson, once the league's designated troublemaker, is now a beloved elder statesman, celebrated at every arena he walks into, his cultural influence finally acknowledged by the same institution that once wrote a dress code to contain him. And LeBron, still playing into his 40s, has become something Iverson never quite got to be in his own era. Respected almost universally, praised by Iverson himself, who has said the hype was well-deserved, that LeBron exceeded it, that he built a blueprint young players now follow, and that he did it, in AI's words, the right way. Sit with how generous that is. The man who warned LeBron about conditional love is now offering him the unconditional kind, publicly, without a hint of the bitterness people accused him of back in 2005. It turns out the advice was never bitter. It was protective. It was a big brother handing his little brother a map of the minefield he'd already walked through, hoping he wouldn't lose the same limbs. The man who warned him lived long enough to watch the warning work, and to watch the kid he warned build a career so carefully managed that the backlash could never fully land again. There's a version of LeBron James that ignored Allen Iverson in that studio, kept doing what felt natural and got swallowed by the villain era the way it swallowed so many stars before him. That version is entirely plausible. The hate in 2010 and 2011 was strong enough to end a lesser man's prime. It didn't, and a real part of the reason is a conversation almost nobody took seriously when it happened. The love was conditional, just like Iverson said. The public was waiting, just like he said, and the only thing that saved LeBron from being consumed by it was that, unlike almost everyone else, he actually believed the person telling him. Nobody wanted to hear it in 2005. It sounded like a bitter man raining on a Golden Boys parade. It was the most useful thing anyone ever told him. By the way, let me know what you think below. Was Allen Iverson giving real wisdom, or did LeBron succeed in spite of that advice rather than because of it? Drop your take in the comments, I want to hear it. Also, did you know there's another warning Iverson gave? This one about the league itself and where it was heading. That took almost 15 years to come true? To find out what he said, click the video on your screen now.